Ever since the divorce, Alan had started avoiding mirrors. Not deliberately, just quietly, the way dust gathers in corners of a room no one visits anymore. The house, once alive with reflections. Her perfume bottles, the framed photos, the tall cheval mirror that used to sit in the bedroom, had grown dim and bare. Sylvia took that mirror when she left, the one that had watched them both fade from each other without saying a word. Now, only the bathroom mirror remained, streaked with toothpaste and fog, dull under weak light. Sometimes he'd catch a glimpse of himself brushing his teeth and instantly look away, pretending to fixate on the sink or the faucet instead. Even his phone's black screen unsettled him. When it died, he'd flip it face down without thinking. The less he saw himself, the better. At first, it was just discomfort. His thinning hair, the gray creeping through his beard, the tired lines under his eyes. But slowly, something shifted. His reflection started to feel aware. Like it wasn't just showing him, but watching him back, judging. The thought was ridiculous, he knew. Just fatigue, loneliness, and too many silent hours spent staring at numbers on his computer for clients he never met. His life had grown so small that it fit inside those four walls. He worked, ate, slept, and paced the hallway outside his office just to remind himself he still could. The bathroom sat at the end of that hall, its mirror always catching the edge of his vision, always there. It started one late afternoon, when the light turned amber and thin, stretching shadows long across the floor. Alan was pacing again when something flickered at the end of the hall, a darker patch in the reflection, wrong somehow. He stopped. Nothing. Just his own tired face in the doorway. He rubbed his eyes and blamed the light, but after that it never quite left him. The next day the same flicker. The next again. A shadow that didn't move when he did, that lingered in the periphery like it was waiting for him to notice. And then came Tuesday, gray afternoon, 2:43 p.m., the house so still that the hum of the refrigerator felt too loud. Alan walked down the hall, half lost in thought, and his eyes drifted to the mirror. That's when he saw a man. He stood right at the edge of the reflection, tall enough that his head almost touched the top frame. His coat hung soaked and dripping, water sliding down but vanishing before it reached the floor. His hair clung wet against his forehead, skin ghostly pale beneath a cold, strange light that seemed to come from inside the mirror itself. Only half his face was visible, but it was enough to make Alan's chest tighten. A grin stretched too far, too sharp, almost human but not quite. His eyes burned faintly orange, like dying embers behind glass. Alan couldn't move. The air felt thick, pressing against him, but the fear came slow, heavy, tangled with something else. Recognition. That face, that grin, the shape of the jaw, it looked like him, distorted and wrong. He blinked once and the figure was gone. The next day he tried to shake it off. He told himself it was nothing, just a tired trick of the eyes. But the following night, the man was there again. This time he stood behind Alan's reflection, close, that same mocking grin pulling at his mouth. And every day after that he came back, sometimes standing far in the background, close enough that Alan swore he could feel the weight of his stare through the glass. Always wet, always smiling. He started calling him the Glad Man, a name that came to him naturally as though he'd always known it. At first, the fear was unbearable, raw, cold, constant. But fear has a strange way of dulling when it never leaves. Soon Alan found himself expecting him, glancing toward any reflective surface just to see if he'd appear. The kettle, the dark TV screen, the window at night. And when the Glad Man was there, that grin would meet him every time, patient and cruel. It wasn't a threatening smile. It was knowing, almost entertained, like it saw everything he hated about himself and found it amusing. Sometimes Alan would whisper under his breath, "What do you want? Why are you watching me?" But there was never a sound, just that grin, that awful, understanding grin. And then one day something inside Alan cracked. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe rage, but he stopped being afraid. One night he caught the reflection again and just laughed, low, bitter, tired. "You think I'm pathetic?" he whispered. "Watch me." And from that day he began to change. Not for hope, but out of defiance. He cleaned the kitchen, opened the windows, took walks outside, started cooking again. He even smiled sometimes out of spite. And though the Glad Man never disappeared, Alan stopped hiding. He looked him dead in the eye whenever he showed up, meeting his grin with one of his own. It was a quiet war between them, one feeding the other. Then one afternoon, while sweeping the kitchen, the broom caught on something under the fridge. Alan knelt, reached down, and pulled out a small, dust-covered photograph. He wiped it clean and froze. It was he and Sylvia standing outside a bar years ago. The night was wet, the pavement glowing pink from the neon sign above them. Everyone was laughing, except him. His grin was wrong, too wide. His coat was drenched, and under that neon light, his eyes reflected faint orange. The sound of the refrigerator's hum vanished. The air turned still and heavy. Alan stared at the photo, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. Slowly, he lifted his gaze to the metallic surface of the fridge, where his reflection waited. Just him, calm, ordinary. He looked lighter somehow. Alive. He smiled, a genuine smile this time. "He's gone," he whispered, and for the first time in months he believed it. That night, he fell asleep easily into a deep, quiet sleep. Somewhere after 3 in the morning, the refrigerator motor kicked back on, humming through the silence. The house was still. If anyone had been standing in the hallway outside the bathroom at that hour, they might have seen it, a tall, faint figure in the dark glass, head tilted, coat dripping softly onto nothing. His eyes were glowing dim orange, and this time he wasn't smiling, he was waiting. Bernie hated visiting his grandmother's house. The way the wallpaper peeled in long yellow strips, the ticking clock that sounded like it was counting down to something. Tonight felt worse. The air was heavy, too still, and even Guapito, the toothless old chihuahua, refused to leave Abuela's lap. "You shouldn't drive tonight, Mijo," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the flickering candle near the Virgin statue. "The storm is coming." But when Bernie stepped outside, the sky was clear. He laughed it off, kissed her forehead, and told Nora they'd be fine. Abuela just sighed and muttered a prayer under her breath as they walked to the car. The desert air was cold and dry, the kind that stings your nose. As they drove, the town lights fell away until only the ribbon of highway stretched ahead, winding through open land. Nora rested her head against the window, smiling. "It's kind of beautiful out here," she whispered. Bernie nodded but kept glancing at the rearview mirror. The road behind them was empty, but the way the red taillights reflected off the dust made it look like something was moving, keeping pace. He tried to ignore it. Nora played soft music from her phone, a song about home, and he focused on the sound until he saw the sign. Ridge Road, San Lazaro, 6 miles. He frowned. "That can't be right," he said. "That road's been closed for years." Nora perked up, intrigued. "Let's take it." Bernie shook his head. "No, that's the one Abuela always talks about, where that carriage went off the cliff." Nora smirked. "Come on, you don't believe that ghost story, do you?" Bernie hesitated, then turned the wheel. The tires crunched over gravel as they entered the old road. The air seemed to thicken instantly, colder, heavier, the smell of rain though no clouds were above. The headlights cut through tall, dead grass, and somewhere out there, something small moved, darting between shadows. "Coyote," Bernie muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. The further they went, the quieter it got. No insects, no wind, not even the hum of the car seemed natural anymore. It felt like they were driving inside a held breath. Then Nora whispered, "Did you see that?" Bernie braked. "See what?" "A woman, standing by the fence." He turned, but the field was empty. He wanted to laugh it off, but his throat was too dry. He accelerated again, faster now, wanting to leave the place behind. But 100 yards later, the car hit something hard. A thud, a jolt, the headlights flickered. "Jesus!" Bernie slammed the brakes. The car skidded sideways, gravel spraying. Nora gasped, covering her mouth. "We hit someone." Bernie's pulse went cold. He jumped out, his shoes crunching over the dirt. "Hello?" he called. The night echoed it back, flat and empty. He crouched low, scanning under the bumper. Nothing. No blood, no torn fabric, no sign of anything. "There's nothing here," he said, voice shaking. Nora stepped out, hugging herself against the chill. Then her phone buzzed, a faint notification light. "It says no signal," she whispered. Bernie froze, watching as her screen flickered between 0 bars and an incoming text. "Turn around." She looked up. "Did you send me that?" Bernie shook his head. "No, let's just go." They got back in. The car started reluctantly, its headlights dimming as if the battery was dying. Bernie turned the wheel, ready to head back toward town, but the road behind them wasn't there anymore. Just a flat stretch of pale dust, and far in the distance, a faint white figure walking along the ridge. "It's not possible," he muttered. "The road, it's gone." Nora leaned forward. "She's coming closer." Bernie blinked. The figure's dress shimmered faintly in the headlights, long and wet-looking though the air was dry. A veil hid her face, Bernie's heartbeat thundered. "Stay in the car," he said, opening the door. The wind hit him like a wave of static. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice thin against the vast emptiness. "Do you need help?" The woman stopped. The veil fluttered once and he saw something beneath, a pale mouth torn at the edges, whispering something he couldn't hear. Nora was crying now, whispering for him to get back in. Bernie stepped closer, almost hypnotized. "Who are you?" he asked. The whisper came clearer now, threading through the air like smoke. "You shouldn't have come back." The veil lifted slightly and he saw her face. Not a skull, not a corpse, but his own grandmother's, younger, eyes wide and wet, staring at him with something between fear and fury. Bernie stumbled back. "Abuela," he breathed. "No," the voice said, cracking, trembling. "Her blood remembers mine." Bernie ran to the car. "Drive," he shouted. Nora didn't question it, she slammed the gas. The car roared forward, but the headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead. The road seemed to twist endlessly, looping back into itself. Bernie's head pounded. He looked in the mirror. The woman wasn't there anymore, only the faint red reflection of their taillights. But as he turned forward again, the figure was standing in the middle of the road, right ahead. Nora screamed, yanking the wheel. The car veered hard, rolling into the ditch. The sound was a violent storm of glass and metal, then silence. When Bernie came to, the windshield was cracked and the air reeked of gasoline. "Nora," he croaked. No answer. He turned. The driver's seat was empty. Her door hung open. Outside, faint footsteps crunched on gravel. He crawled out, dizzy, calling her name. The night was dimly lit by the car's broken headlights, smoke rising in white ribbons. Then he saw her, standing near the fence, unmoving. "Nora," he called, limping toward her. But when she turned, it wasn't her face. It was the woman's. The same pale veil, the same trembling hands. The voice came soft, almost apologetic. "She's gone, just like me." Bernie backed away, his breath sharp and shallow. "What do you want from me?" The bride tilted her head. "The truth." She pointed behind him. Bernie turned and froze. There was a rusted carriage, half buried in the dirt, with skeletal horses still harnessed, their bones blackened and twisted. He stepped closer. The air smelled of burnt wood and iron. On the cracked metal seat lay an old photo. His grandmother, young and smiling, standing beside a man in a dark suit. The same man whose shadow now stood behind him. Bernie didn't turn. He didn't have to. He felt the hand, cold and rough, grip his shoulder. The voice rasped into his ear, deep and broken. "It's family business, son." The sky cracked open, not with thunder, but a scream that seemed to come from the earth itself. Then silence again. The next morning, the road to San Lazaro was empty except for a single car, overturned, its doors open, its radio still humming faintly with static. And on the back seat, a candle flickered weakly beside a small red box with a cross on it, the kind Abuela used to keep by her bed. The first time Lena heard the whisper in the trees, she thought it was the wind, a low, broken hum that rose and fell like someone trying to remember a song. It came from the woods behind their cabin, the same woods her father warned her never to go near after sunset. They'd moved here a few months ago into the kind of place that always looked one day away from collapsing. Rusted mailbox, leaning porch, windows that seemed to breathe with every gust of wind. Her father called it a fresh start after her mother's accident, though nothing about this place felt new. It smelled of damp earth and something older, like attics do when you first open them after years of disuse. Every night, as the sky dimmed, the woods turned into a wall of shadow, the tree line bending slightly inward as if it were listening. That night, she stood at the back door, staring into the dark, watching her father's silhouette move near the shed. He'd been digging there all week, though he said it was for a compost pit. She didn't believe him. The dirt pile grew higher every day, and sometimes in the middle of the night, she heard the soft sound of metal scraping stone. When she asked about it once, he only said, "The ground remembers things. It's better to give back what it lost." The next day, Lena found something in the field. A jar half buried, filled with cloudy water and what looked like hair. Her father took it from her before she could open it, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. That evening, the whisper started again, closer this time, threading through the cracks in the cabin walls, humming like it knew her name. Lena tried to tell herself it was just grief making her hear things, but when she went to close the back door, she saw handprints on the glass, small, wet, and smeared upward, like someone had been trying to get in. The next morning, her father was gone. His tools were still by the shed, but his boots were missing, and the trail of footprints in the dirt led straight into the woods, stopping after 10 feet. No broken branches, no sign of struggle. Just an open space where the mist seemed thicker. Lena searched until nightfall, shouting his name until her voice cracked, but the forest never echoed her back. It breathed slowly and steadily as if listening. She slept with the lights on that night, her father's old jacket clutched to her chest. Around midnight, the radio in the kitchen turned on by itself, static at first, then a faint voice buried in the noise. She walked to it, every step heavy with dread. The voice grew clearer, distorted but human, whispering a single phrase over and over, "Don't dig it up." She slammed it off and ran to her room, but the whisper outside the window had already begun again, the same rhythm, the same hum. She didn't sleep. By morning, the mist hadn't lifted, and she saw new handprints on the glass. This time larger, pressed against the inside of the window as if something had been watching her sleep. She packed her bag and tried to leave, but the road that led to town was gone. Not blocked, gone. The asphalt ended where the dirt began, swallowed by the same pale fog that curled along the trees. She drove forward anyway, hoping the GPS would pick up, but the screen only blinked between static and a strange pattern of circles. When she stopped the car, she realized the woods around her weren't the same ones from behind the cabin. These were older, the trunks thicker, the air heavier, the silence absolute. She turned off the engine and listened. For a long time there was nothing. Then she heard a distant creak, like a swing hanging on an invisible rope. She followed the sound, her shoes sinking into wet soil until she reached a clearing. In the middle stood a wooden frame, half collapsed, like the remains of an old gallows. Beneath it, something was buried, a shape under the dirt, the top of a glass jar glinting faintly. Her breath hitched. It looked like the same jar she'd found before, but older, covered in moss. Against every instinct, she brushed the dirt away and pulled it free. Inside was a black, twisting shape, too fluid to be solid, too solid to be liquid. It pressed against the glass like it could see her. The air around her grew colder, her ears filling with that same humming sound, low and mournful. Then a voice, not from outside but inside her head, spoke one word, "Father." She dropped the jar. It didn't shatter. It just split. A hairline cracked down the middle, and from it leaked a thin, dark mist that spread along the ground, winding around her feet like smoke. She ran, but the forest moved with her. Every direction she turned led back to the same clearing, the same broken frame, the same open jar. The whisper rose higher, more urgent now, and she saw movement between the trees, dozens of pale faces, half-formed, flickering in and out like reflections on water. They weren't watching her. They were watching the ground. She looked down and saw the dirt shifting beneath her shoes, something pushing upward, fingers, no roots, curling through the soil trying to take hold. She stumbled backward and tripped over something hard. Her father's boots, still laced, still standing upright as if someone had stepped out of them. The whisper turned into a low wail, and for the first time, Lena understood what he'd meant when he said the ground remembers. It wasn't a warning, it was a confession. The fog thickened, swallowing the trees, the clearing, everything. She crawled toward the boots, calling for him, for anyone, but her voice came out strangled, like the air itself refused to carry it. Then through the haze she saw him, her father, standing just beyond the mist, his body half-formed, eyes hollow but aware. He raised a hand slowly, pointing at the jar. His lips moved soundlessly, but she knew what he was saying. "Bury it." Her hands shook as she grabbed the jar and shoved it into the ground, piling dirt over it until her nails split. The whisper stopped. The air went still. She looked up. Her father was gone. Only the trees remained, silent and waiting. She got up, trembling, and walked back toward where the road should have been. This time it was there. The fog had cleared. The cabin stood small in the distance, its windows glowing softly in the late morning light. When she stepped inside, everything looked normal again, the radio off, the air still. But when she opened the pantry, she froze. Dozens of jars lined the shelves, each labeled in her father's handwriting. Some were cracked, some were empty, and from one in the corner, the faintest hum began again, low and familiar, as if the woods were breathing through the glass.